Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were an ordinary American couple living in New York City. They had 2 young sons and seemed to lead a quiet life. Julius was an electrical engineer, and Ethel was a homemaker. They were both born in New York to Jewish immigrant families, and were involved in community and political activities. Like many people during the Great Depression, they held strong beliefs about workers' rights and social justice. Their lives, however, would become the center of one of the most sensational and controversial espionage cases in American history, forever linking their names with treason and the atomic bomb. Their story unfolded during a time of great fear and suspicion in the United States. The Cold War had just begun, pitting America against the Soviet Union. This was not a war fought with armies on battlefields, but a war of ideologies, secrets, and technology. The most terrifying technology of all was the atomic bomb, a weapon of immense power that the United States had developed first. When the Soviet Union successfully tested its own atomic bomb in 1949, much sooner than expected, a wave of panic swept through America. Many government officials became convinced that the Soviets must have stolen the secret plans. This intense fear of communism and Soviet spies created a tense atmosphere known as the Red Scare. The US government launched aggressive investigations to find anyone who might be sympathetic to the Soviet Union or involved in passing secrets. It was within this climate of paranoia that the Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI, began to uncover a spy ring. The trail eventually led them to the apartment of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg. They were accused of being at the heart of a network that had delivered America's most guarded military secrets directly into the hands of its greatest enemy. The accusations against them were shocking and severe. The government claimed that Julius Rosenberg, using his connections as an engineer, had recruited spies and organized a system to collect classified information. He was accused of passing on technical data about radar, sonar, and most importantly, the design of the atomic bomb. His wife, Ethel, was accused of helping him. The government said she typed up the secret notes and encouraged her husband's activities. They were charged with conspiracy to commit espionage, a crime that the prosecution would argue was worse than murder, because it put the entire country at risk. The trial of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg began in March 1951 and quickly captured the nation's attention. It was held in a New York City courtroom, where prosecutors laid out their case. They argued that the Rosenbergs' actions had given the Soviet Union the power to build an atomic bomb, which they claimed directly led to the Korean War and the deaths of thousands of American soldiers. The chief prosecutor, Irving Sapol, painted a picture of a devoted communist couple who had betrayed their country for a foreign power, driven by ideology rather than money. The stakes were incredibly high, with the fate of the Rosenbergs hanging in the balance. The key evidence against them came from the testimony of others who had already been arrested in the spy ring. The star witness was Ethel's own brother, David Greenglass. Greenglass was a former Army machinist who had worked on the top-secret Manhattan Project, the program that built the atomic bomb. He confessed to being a spy, and testified that he had given Julius hand-drawn sketches of the bomb's design. He claimed that Julius and Ethel had recruited him, and that Ethel had typed up his notes. His testimony was the most direct and damaging evidence linking the Rosenbergs to atomic espionage. Another important witness was Harry Gold, a chemist who acted as a courier for the spy ring. Gold testified that he had met with a Soviet agent and received secrets from another scientist, Klaus Fuchs, who had also worked on the bomb. He then claimed he met with David Greenglass to collect the atomic sketches, which he later passed to a Soviet contact. While Gold never met the Rosenbergs himself, his testimony helped the government connect all the pieces of the conspiracy. The prosecution used his story to show how the secret information flowed from the labs in New Mexico all the way to Moscow, with Julius Rosenberg acting as a key organizer. Throughout the trial, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg maintained their innocence. They took the stand in their own defense, but their performance was not convincing to the jury. When asked about their political beliefs and whether they were communists, they invoked their Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination. In the fearful climate of the 1950s, this was seen by many as an admission of guilt. The jury deliberated for a short time before finding them both guilty of conspiracy to commit espionage. The judge, Irving Kaufman, would now have to decide their punishment. The guilty verdict and the subsequent death sentence ignited a firestorm of controversy that divided the American public and the world. Many people believed the Rosenbergs were dangerous traitors who deserved the harshest punishment. They saw the trial as a necessary step to protect national security during the Cold War. These supporters trusted the government and the justice system, viewing the Rosenbergs as the face of a hidden enemy threatening the American way of life. For them, the sentence was a clear message to the Soviet Union, and any potential spies that betrayal would not be tolerated. However, a significant number of people believed the Rosenbergs were victims of a political witch hunt. They argued that the trial was unfair, and that the evidence was weak. They pointed out that the case relied heavily on the testimony of confessed spies like David Greenglass, who received a lighter sentence in exchange for testifying against his own sister and brother-in-law. These critics felt that the government, desperate to blame someone for the Soviet bomb, had unfairly targeted the Rosenbergs because of their Jewish background and past communist sympathies. They saw the case as a frightening example of government overreach. The controversy spread far beyond the borders of the United States. Around the world there were widespread protests and appeals for mercy. Famous figures like the scientist Albert Einstein, the artist Pablo Picasso, and even the Pope pleaded with President Eisenhower to spare the couple's lives. International observers questioned whether the death penalty was an appropriate punishment for espionage, especially since it was not a crime punishable by death in peacetime. The case became a symbol of what many viewed as the hysteria and injustice of the American Cold War mentality, damaging the country's reputation abroad. Despite the growing international pressure and domestic debate, the courts and the president refused to intervene. The Rosenbergs were offered a deal. If they confessed and named other spies, their lives would be spared. They refused, insisting on their innocence to the very end. This refusal to cooperate was seen by their supporters as proof of their conviction and integrity. To their opponents, however, it was seen as final proof of their loyalty to the Soviet Union over their own country, and even over their own children. The nation remained deeply split on what the truth was. On June 19, 1953, Julius and Ethel Rosenberg were executed by electric chair at Sing Sing prison in New York. They became the only American civilians ever executed for espionage during the Cold War. Their deaths did not end the controversy. Instead, they cemented the case as a painful and unresolved chapter in American history. In their final letters to their two young sons, Michael and Robert, they continued to declare their innocence, writing that they were comforted in the knowledge that history would prove them right. Their execution left behind two orphans and a nation grappling with difficult questions about justice and fear. For decades after their deaths, the Rosenberg case continued to be debated by historians, legal scholars, and the public. Were they master spies who stole the secret of the bomb, or were they scapegoats sacrificed to the anxieties of the Cold War? For a long time there was no definitive answer. Supporters continued to campaign to clear their names, while the government maintained that justice had been served. The case remained frozen in time, a powerful symbol of how political fear could influence the legal system and how the quest for national security could clash with individual rights. The fall of the Soviet Union in the 1990s brought new information to light. Declassified documents from both the United States and Russia provided a clearer picture. The Venona Project, a top-secret U.S. program that had decoded Soviet intelligence messages, revealed evidence that Julius Rosenberg was indeed involved in espionage. The messages showed he had passed on military and industrial secrets and had recruited other spies. However, these same documents contained very little information about Ethel Rosenberg, suggesting her role was much smaller, if she had any role at all. Today, the Rosenberg story remains important because it serves as a powerful cautionary tale. Most historians now agree that Julius was a spy, but many believe Ethel was wrongly executed. Her conviction relied almost entirely on the testimony of her brother, who later admitted he lied about her involvement to protect his own wife. The case forces us to consider how fear can shape justice and whether the government went too far. It reminds us of the profound human cost of political conflict and the enduring challenge of balancing national security with the fundamental principles of a fair trial.